Well, hi, I'm Ed Parcaut, your host of Real Estate Jerky Live, and I'm here with Tom Bryant of the Investment Consulting Group. He was on the radio last weekend, and I thought I'd have him come in and talk more about what we talked about on that and go in a little bit more in depth. How you doing, Tom?
I'm good, Ed. How are you this morning?
Good. And I really appreciate you coming on here because I know this is not what you like to do. This is outside your lane, and you hate this kind of stuff, and I really appreciate it. So I must have something on you to get you to come here.
Well, I'm just a big fan, Ed. So anything I can do to help and further clarify what I might have misrepresented last week, who knows?
I don't think we misrepresented anything, but I just think it needs more clarification on what things are doing because, when I have you on the radio show, I think we got you for about 20 some minutes. And, that's not a lot of time to explain. Like one of the questions I keep being asked, because we bought some acreage and we were going to build our home this last year. And then COVID came and kind of messed up our lumber. Yeah. I mean, our construction loan. And then now I'm hearing, thank goodness I didn't build because lumber prices are so high. So can you explain a little bit about that? Why? And I don't mean to jump right into this, but this is something I want to know and make sure people understand the first part. Why are lumber prices so high right now?
Certainly, Ed. And I don't profess to be a lumber expert, but there are things that occurred in the last couple of years that have contributed to the higher lumber prices, and I can just back up and kind of walk through what I understand has occurred. Lumber prices are, if you look at the futures market, lumber prices on average in the last 10 years have been around, $400 per 1,000 board feet. Back in the 2005s and 6s, when the real estate market began to slow down and building began to slow down, lumber was down in the like $240 per 1,000 board feet. So from this point forward, we're just going to assume 1,000 board feet of lumber for pricing. Okay.
Or how about we bring it on? So what was a 2x4 cost? 99 cents.
I have no idea. 2x4 was a couple bucks. Yeah, I know. Yeah, 99 cents maybe. A lot of our lumber was coming from the soft lumber was coming from Canada. And over a period of time, Canada has become a little bit more conservative in their exports, and they're not cutting as many trees as they were. So they've kind of slowed down their production or their harvesting of the lumber. And Canada was importing both finished lumber and raw lumber to the United States for other things besides just building houses. There's paper pulp and other things that lumber is used for. So they kind of slowed down their production and harvesting of lumber, and in the last couple of years, after the big building boom of the 04, 05, 06, after that slowed down, production sort of slowed down a little bit because the necessity for lumber was slowing down. So production slowed down. Lumber prices stayed in that area. They got as high as in 2018, they got as high as $557 per 1,000 board feet. Then things slowed down, and in the last year or two, production slowed down a little bit, but the lumber industry maintained, the major lumber mills maintained their production, but a lot of smaller lumber mills slowed down or stopped their production because lumber prices got so low that they couldn't make a living. I mean, it was cheaper to import it, or it was for the developers, the builders. And so a lot of the smaller lumber companies just sort of shut down the milling because it wasn't productive. It wasn't profitable. So on comes COVID, and we had lumber prices in February at $463 per 1,000 board feet, which is that average price. But then when the COVID came, we saw production facilities everywhere just stop producing. The panic and the fear, and production just stopped. Let me back up. Over the last year and a half, lumber prices had gone up from 18 to 19. They went up from 316 a 1,000 board feet to 451. Part of that was because the economy's starting to build back up. Plus, we've had some fires that have wiped out a lot of lumber in California. So lumber access to raw materials had been reduced. So in comes the COVID scare. Lumber prices dropped. Futures prices dropped to $300 and I'm looking at the chart. $311, $264 on April the 2nd. Lumber prices dropped to $264 per 1,000 board feet. And so it just got really cheap because production construction stopped.
Right.
So people go home, and contractors and do-it-yourselfers go home. They have to stay at home. They can't go to work. And the DIYs, do-it-yourselfers, decide it's time to do some work. So all of a sudden, the demand in the big box stores for lumber went through the roof. And they could not keep the material on the shelves. And the lumber manufacturers, the industry, began to gear up and feed that requirement, the demand, and in the process, they raised their prices because they had the opportunity to make some money. And so they started their production. These are the big lumber mills, okay, not the little mom and pops. I'm talking, the Weyerhausers of the world. And so they started up their production, and lo and behold, between April of last year and now, lumber prices have gone from $264 a 1,000 board feet to $1,238. So roughly quadrupling, almost, the price of milled lumber to the consumer.
I'm sorry, it went from what to $1,200?
It went from $264 to now $1,238.
Wow.
Yeah, wow. Now the average price over the years has been around $400 per 1,000 board feet.
So we're 3 times that on average years.
Right. 3 times that, and it's up to 3 times that, and 4 times what it was at the bottom. So the lumber companies right now, the milling companies, are making a fortune, and they don't want to give that up. And in fact, large developers don't buy their lumber from big box stores. They go directly to the production facilities and buy theirs by the rail carload. They don't buy 10 sheets of plywood. They buy rail carloads of plywood, right, and rail carloads of 2x4s or whatever production material they need. So they get a better price, a much better price on their lumber right now. But
not that much better. I mean, it's
but it's better. It's better because they cut through they get past the middleman. They don't have to go to the big box stores. They can buy it direct at the same price the big box stores are. But you're right. They're still paying an exorbitant price. And I'm not really sure what the percentage of a housing cost is attributed to lumber. I have no idea what that percentage is. I mean, but I've been told that estimates have been increased on housing costs by 20%. And so if the cost of the house goes up by 20% just because of lumber costs, lumber's gone up 4 times, 3.5 to 4 times what its average price is. That's substantial. So I understand that contractors don't even want to give bids because they're afraid of where lumber prices are going to continue to go. Now, I don't know how much longer the surge in lumber prices are going to be going up, but eventually the demand will decrease and the production will continue at this pace or increase, because if you're getting this kind of prices for your lumber, for your finished lumber, and your raw material prices have not gone up, you're cutting a fat hog. And in fact, these stock companies that are producing the lumber, their earnings have gone through the roof, and they've tripled in value also because of the earnings. And they're not really ready to give that up. but eventually the market will push them back to an average price. I don't think we'll ever see $260 for 1,000 board feet again, but you could be expecting $500. This to pull back to $500, probably, I would think. But again, I don't know that market very well, but certainly the market will fix itself over a period of time.
I mean, because if you're saying that if you have a $500,000 house you're building and your prices went up by 20%, that's another $100,000 that
Right.
you're paying for your house. Because I know that when they were saying that if we would have finished our house this last year, it would have cost us another $150,000 in, price point for our lumber. That's just,
Right.
so that's just the milling of the raw materials and that getting out. And then there was some company moving their production to Texas to make not MDF, but one of the board where they use the glue and they put all the stuff together. Well, the glue froze in Texas. And so now they can't, so now they're having problems there. And that's so expensive. That stuff's like $50 a board, which used to be like 20 some dollars a board. So, and the only reason I'm bringing up about lumber prices is because everybody keeps saying, it affects housing, right? Because if builders who are building houses right now are canceling contracts because now their prices are going up, and it's easier. And in your contract, it states that they can cancel or increase because of their costs increasing. So it's easier for them to cancel. Like I just heard in Utah, there was 15 contracts with this one, townhouse or developer, and then they coming back. 5 out of those 15 had re-signed new contracts. The other 10 didn't. But in this market, there's so many people behind those people waiting to buy. They're like, go ahead. Yeah, we'll buy it for that. We'll take that, So,
well, if the developers are canceling their contracts, that is going to help to push the prices of lumber back down.
they are, but they're just doing that to get them to be able to put them into a higher price.
Oh, so what you're saying is they're just canceling the contracts with the consumer, with the buyers, not with the lumber companies or whoever they're buying their lumber from.
Correct.
Oh, so they're
the consumer who is buying that house is getting a new bid for the new place, and instead of going, your prices for your place went up $50,000, they're canceling the contract, and then and if the people don't agree to it, because that's part of their contract, that they, then they're going to put it back out there for somebody else to buy. So I was talking to builders locally here in our area, and they're saying we don't even know what our lumber prices are until it drops it on our doorstep, so we don't know how to price it.
So you're saying that the demand for new housing is so great that people don't even care what the prices are. They'll buy it regardless, or
in certain right now
certain markets.
Yeah, in certain markets. And I saw a presentation by a building association, and they're talking about the demand for, or where's my camera? The demand. So here's what they're producing, right?
Mhm.
And this is the demand. That's the difference.
So they still can't keep up with demand. So if that being the case, then lumber prices will probably stay up here for a while.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it will be till the builders who are building go back to them and say, hey, you need to cut these costs. We know you're making a ton. You can go ahead and let us start importing from other places and other things happening. There's a lot of stuff that needs to happen, but I just see that is going to affect the housing market. One, pricing is going to continue to rise, because if all the new homes are going up because the costs are going up, then that just means the new home prices are going to continue to rise. And that means the resale market is going to continue to rise.
Well, and the suppliers for the big box stores, Home Depot and Lowe's, their profits, and this isn't because they've marked up the lumber, but their profits are on sales over the last year are up 20%, 18 and 20%, depending on which store you're looking at. And so that's the DIYers, do-it-yourselfers.
Yes. I understand.
DIYers. Good. I need to learn how to spell that. Those people and the small contractors have been, hitting those stores pretty hard. And so Home Depot's not making a bigger spread on the lumber. In fact, they're probably making less because their cost for the lumber is greater, and they're probably making about the same amount per board foot on the lumber, because for their handling, but they're not marking it up greater. So it's all coming from the manufacturer. And one might argue that there's a supply chain problem with raw materials, but I don't see that as being a case. These major lumber companies have just acres and acres and acres of raw materials sitting around just waiting to be milled. So So that's
So
not
they
the
just need to
issue.
get to it. Or some of these smaller mills maybe need to get into business.
They will be
right?
firing back up. They're starting to fire back up too.
And that's the same thing we run into when the petroleum prices go up, or and they go down. Then other forms of stuff come out, and now you can do it more now. I'm not talking about because the pipeline was shut down. We don't want to get into that whole political stuff. I just was saying that all this stuff has to do with other things, and eventually things go back to where they were, or not exactly where they were, but lower, so that everybody can afford.
And it kind of starts at the Wall Street level a bit, because there are people making assumptions on future costs, and so they will short. I mean, if at some point they determine that lumber prices are going to drop, they could short the market and the lumber future prices, and that could have a snowball effect also. So I mean, we're a little bit responsible here, but the flip side of that is there are major lumber companies hedging their future costs for lumber by buying the futures right now, locking in their prices. Why you would lock in your price at $2,200 a 1,000 board feet, I have no idea. But
is that what the futures are right now?
Yep.
Wow, 2,200, not 1,200, but
I'm sorry, 1,200. Thank you, not 2,200. Yeah, 1,238. Yeah, sorry.
No, that's why we're here, to help each other.
What's an extra $1,000? Yeah.
Yeah, you're already spending that much already. What's another $100,000 on top of the $100,000 you just paid for your house, right? All right. So a lot of people are saying, I had thrown this up here, but are we going to say a housing bubble? But I don't want to ask that right now. What I want to ask is, which I don't have up there, is are we going to see the stock market tank? Right? Are we going to see a repull of?
Gosh, I hope not.
I mean,
right now, everything is in order for this market to have a very good year. Everything. I mean, people going back to work, businesses are opening up, people have free money to spend, and most of that money is getting spent from the stimulus money. I mean, cities have been given so much money. The city that we live in, has been given. I mean, they're sitting on millions of dollars of the COVID relief money, and they're saying, how are we going to spend this? So there's a lot of stimulus money out there that should continue to stimulate the economy, at least through the end of the year, if not well into next year. Eventually, the market's going to say, hey, wait a minute, this is going to dry up eventually, and it will have a correction. Collapse is strong. I don't know what percentage of collapse is. Maybe 50% reduction, pullback in the market is a collapse. I don't know. We're very comfortable manipulating ourselves around a 10% pullback, which is reasonable. 30 to 50% is usually because things are really wrong, really, really bad. But the market has a tendency to correct itself to a 10 or 15% pullback when it thinks things are well overbought and it sees trouble ahead. So nothing in the near future. I'm optimistic for this year. There are some statistics that support my suspicions that the market will be higher at the end of the year than it is right now, but we've come quite a ways in the last 4 months. So I'd be happy to be right where we're at the end of the year.
So you don't think we're headed for a 1970s inflation? I know. I'm just throwing. So here's the thing, is right. If you look
at a tough call.
Right. So if you look at what happened after 68, right, we come back from our war and we have to do stimulus programs to get everybody back to work and do certain things. And then other stuff that's going on. People can say that we're pretty much in the same scenario. It just depends on how much more money is going to be spent. And that's just my take on it. I could be totally wrong because I do mortgages. I don't do the market. So that's why, I mean, I'm just worried that if we go that route, I mean, it sounds like it was pretty high inflation. I think it was 6.83 or somewhere around there, right around 7% inflation, right? But that just means interest rates go up and everything changes and it gets ugly. And, so my question is, what do you see going forward? You just said the market's going to be in the same position as now. Do you see anything that scares you besides cryptocurrency going forward? And we'll talk about cryptocurrency in a second.
As for reference, I got a couple of texts about that comment last week.
Good or bad?
Good, actually.
Okay. We'll talk about that in a second. Let's finish on this.
Yeah, same fear. Let's see. Hyperinflation? No, I don't think so. I think our Federal Reserve and the Treasury has both said they're going to do everything they can to maintain interest rates at this level, and they're going to watch the situation aggressively and try to keep us from going into a major inflationary period. Now, 2 or 3% inflation is fine. Those are healthy inflation numbers. 7% or 10%, those are scary, and those wreck the dollar and wreck all sorts of things. So, I mean, we still have a labor shortage in some areas, and so that would, if that could force wages higher, and that would be inflationary too. So, I hope not. I hope we're looking at 2 to 3%, and I'm not really sure what you can do to protect yourself against 7 or 8% inflation.
Buy a house.
Property is a good place to be. Tangible assets.
Buy assets. That's what you do. Sorry. I moved into a new studio that before COVID was not a big deal, but now that everybody's back in the building, I can hear the elevator constantly. So.
Oh, you're back in the office, back in the building. Good.
Yeah. All right. So you were talking about, all right, you don't see the inflation. And I want to get into the other thing we talked about in a second, but do you see this? Are rates going up? I mean, everybody's asking, what are rates going to do? Are they going to go to rise? Are they going back down? I've heard a couple different statements, and that is that we're going to see over the next few months inflation increase a little bit, right? And each month it goes up a little bit, and then rates tick up a little bit more. And then starting into the year into next year, there won't be the inflation, and we're going to see rates go back down the other way. I know you're not a rate expert, but what do you think?
In a typical market, there's seasonal adjustments in interest rates, as you know, and they're usually lowest in the wintertime and higher in the summertime because the demand for money increases. I wouldn't see anything excess of a seasonal adjustment. So, yeah, they could go up a little bit. And I don't think they're going to go up enough where people are going to want to run to the bank and lock in their 10-year CDs. I think you could see a 100 basis point increase. Would 3.5%, 3.75% 30-year notes make it hurt the housing market? I doubt it. It's you and I, when I bought my first house, interest rates were at 17%. So 3%, 4%, they're gifts as far as I'm concerned. So I wouldn't be overly concerned about it.
I think the only thing that has happened is if you look at people like myself, where all of us have done a disservice to the rest of the community, is we got people into really low interest rates that will never possibly move, right? Because they have 2.5 on a 15-year or 2.875 on a 30-year. And if they sell the house and go buy something else, the rate will be 3.5 or 4%. I think that's the only thing that I could see that would slow down anything going forward.
So what you're saying is because the interest rates are so low, people have locked in these rates and they're less likely to move out of their house and relocate or move up, because if interest rates go up, they're not, it would be unlikely that they would want to give up the current rate. That's a possibility.
Right. Because if you buy the same exact house for a 1% higher in interest rate, you're going to be paying, $250 more a month just there, not counting on,
Yeah.
So I
Plus
just
that is people have so much equity in their homes right now that they could refinance, or they could just, it's just cheaper to stay where you're at or remodel. Yeah. So I was talking to some people the other day about the forbearance issue, and for a while there, I was really concerned about all those houses that were under forbearance coming to market and wrecking the values of the existing homes that they're out there. And the reality is, these people have so much equity in their houses now. If they put their house on the market, if the forbearance puts them in a position where they have to sell their house, they're not going to walk away from the house. They've got equity in it. They're going to sell it in the market, and that might slow down the rise in the values of homes, but it certainly isn't going to create a collapse like we saw in 07, 8, 9, something like that.
Yeah, so, value's going up, not down. That's the difference. Right. And what we went through had nothing to do with the housing market. It had to do with a virus. And so that, we were stuck in our homes or whatever, and people did a lot of refinancing and doing cash out to pay off debt. And we talked about this on the show last weekend, that if you have debt, you need to look at refinancing, paying off that debt. This is the first time we both agreed on actually using the equity to help you to put yourself in a better situation, because normally I'm against it, but I've run numbers where you can refinance your house, pay off $40,000 in debt, save $1,000 a month, reapply that towards your principal, and have that house paid off in 13 years, even with the new loan as a 30-year. And so there's just restructuring what you're doing. I'm not saying people will do that, but even if you do $500 a month difference, we talked about this the other day and I messed up on my number, but rule of 72, not 78. Rule of 72 is how your money doubles with the interest rate you have. And if you have 20% credit card debt, that means your money's going to your credit card debt's going to double every 3 years on you.
So what you're saying is, and I think this is how I interpret what you're saying. The American homeowner is in a healthier position now than they were a year or two ago, because they've been able to reduce the cost of servicing their debt, and they have more equity in their homes now than they did 2 or 3 years ago.
That's what I said, I guess. Yes, that's exactly right.
So that sounds like a rosy situation for our economy, does it not?
Yes, it does. I mean,
cost me less to service my debt. I'm making as much, if not more, than I was when I came into this thing, and my house has gone up by 20% in value.
Just 15% in the last year. So if you look at the last couple of years, you're looking at 25 to 30, which is,
so everybody that owns 2 houses is a millionaire now.
Right, and they can service their debt for a lot less and have it paid off in 15 years or 20 years. I mean, people are talking about rates. Rates went up. If you look at all right, so the 10-year, long bond, whatever, that's only, what is that, at 1.5 something now? Again, it's back down, right?
Look.
Yeah. So thank you. I mean, that's what's good about doing these things live.
10-year 1.61. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, yes, we, during the pandemic, that thing was down to 0.6 or 0.7. I mean, it was really half that, right?
Yeah. Right.
And I feel that during that period of time, rates were low, but the problem is the rates were low, but there was a built-in factor, a built-in, little, I forget the word I'm looking for, but a built-in amount to protect the lenders and protect other people because of the forbearance, that we didn't get the lowest rate we possibly could under those numbers that we could have been at. Where now supposedly the bonds back up, the 10-year notes back up, even though that's not exactly what we work off of rates, we're looking off of mortgage-backed securities. We're seeing that those numbers, from then to now, our rates are pretty close. We're an eighth lower than we were last year at this time, right? Everybody thinks rates are up. I mean, the phone call for refinancing went way down. Yes, we refinanced, I don't know, 5 trillion people, dollars, some ridiculous amount of number, that we did last year. But there's still a lot of people who have a 4% rate or a 4.5% rate or mortgage insurance or whatever, and they should refinance and get rid of that. And look at, all right, now I'm saving $170. If I pay off this other debt, how much more will I save and protect myself so that I'm in a better situation going forward for I can put more money in my retirement account, put more money in my kids' 529 plan, put more money in other things. So, or buy that second home I'm going to retire to down the road, do it now versus when it's, up another 50% in the next 10 years.
So. The only people that have been, from my perspective, that have been really hurt by these really low interest rates are the people that are living off of interest from their savings that they have at the bank. So if you're a CD buyer and you're used to getting 4 or 5% or 8 or 10%, like I saw 20 years ago, you're now getting 0.5% for locking up your money for 2 or 3 years, and that's really hurting those people. But again, they probably bought their homes for $30,000 and they've been living there for 40, 50 years, you hope. And the renters I worry about because rents have gone through the roof. But of course, most of those people don't have excessive savings and investments otherwise. So I'm sure there's the exception to that rule too.
Right. And I had a lady on the show, agent. She was talking about she's a property management, and she was saying, hey, you have to go through the same thing to rent actually worse now to rent a house, right? The qualifications, you might as well buy, because your payment's going to be, the same or less than what you can rent for now. The issue we run into is there's just not enough homes. I saw the numbers today. I was going to put it on here, but I guess over the last year we had 500,000 people leave California, right? I don't know what the net exodus is with the people coming in and people leaving. Sounds like a lot, but we have 34 million people in California, and we still have a lot of people looking at homes. If you look at some of these numbers, you can see lines. There's 20 people waiting to go see a house right now still in California, and it's that way everywhere. I'm having a lady on Thursday from Dallas, Texas, to talk about the pros and cons of moving to Texas. And, one of the things people don't think about is if I leave California, of course, weather, right? And you move to Texas, our property, and I'm sorry, this is about other than what I had you on here. I apologize.
I'm learning.
All right. So property taxes here in California is 1.25%, right? Property taxes in Texas are 3%. Right. If you live in a normal community, and I don't mean normal thinking community, I mean just not by a high fire zone, your insurance is probably $65 to $75 a month. You move to Texas, you have the same problem we have up in the foothills in the Tuolumne County and Calaveras County, where you're in a high fire zone, or in other places in California. So your insurance could be, because you got to get tornado, you got to get all that other stuff. They have golf ball hail storms. They have other stuff that they deal with that we don't have to deal with. So that's another $3,000 a year of insurance that here in town, it was $650. So
I think the difference is my brother just moved to Texas, by the way, my younger brother from Delaware. And the real difference is state income tax. So that's the makeup.
Right. And that's the question that you have to look at, right?
Right.
So if you leave California and you have a $500,000 house and your property taxes are $6,000 a year, and you go to Texas and now your property taxes on the same $500,000 house is now $15,000, right?
Right.
And your insurance is now up, and now you're at $18,000 difference, so you're paying more. How much are you saving in the actual?
Yeah. You have to have $400,000 worth of income at retirement in order to justify the move, because really the state income tax savings is where you can buy more house for a lesser price. So my little brother moved from Delaware, sold his house for $680,000, moved to Kilgore, Texas, bought the same size house and paid $340,000 for it. So he's only paying, property tax on half as much house. It's the same size house, but half as much property value, and his state income tax will be zero. So there's the gig for him. Plus he got out of Delaware, but
right, but that's not California.
Yeah, I know. You can never come back to California once you leave.
Right. And that's the other issue, right? A lot of people have left, and people have come back, and to get back into that house within that year, you just lost 15%. I'm just saying, if you owned it for last year, you would have lost 15%. So on 300,000, you just lost what's that, $45,000.
Yeah.
So now you're paying $45,000 more for the house that you left. And so it's really difficult to get that. I'm not saying that people don't have reasons for moving, and that's great. But for me, the first thing I realized when I leave California, I have to deal with weather. Yes, here in the Central Valley, we have to deal with about 20 some days over 100, but I can deal with that versus, 200 and so many days of humidity and heat.
Or severe cold. Yeah.
Right. Well, that was a unique situation for Texas.
No, I understand. Yeah.
But
we do have
Right.
We do have the weather. There's no doubt about it.
All right, so we got off this my little tangent about moving, right? But all right, so I want to go back to, a lot of people ask, we talked about this on the radio show last weekend about what keeps you up at night, and your answer was cryptocurrency. And I interviewed another person on Inner Edison today on a different podcast I do, and he's a financial planner. And he's like, I like it, but I don't think it's going to be, the blockchain part of it is what's going to be important for other things, and how that's going to protect other things. But he didn't have the same worry, and he's younger than you. So, and what I mean is, you're older and you've seen things. You worked for E.F. Hutton. I'm sorry, yeah, exactly. Nobody's going to understand that watching this unless they're our age.
I was actually explaining to one of Matt's friends yesterday. He said, "Where'd you start?" And I said, "E.F. Hutton." What's that? I was like,
yeah. Well, when E.F. Hutton, what? Everybody listens.
E.F. Hutton talks, people listen. Yeah.
Anyway, and you lived through Black Monday, right?
Right there, yeah.
Or Black Tuesday. What was it? What Black Day?
It was the whole week was terrible. It was October 19th, 1987.
Yeah, I think it was 87. That's
what I started this business in 1984.
Right.
Yeah.
So what's different about you and other people is you lived through that, and that taught you what a lot of financial planners don't think about, and how you really need to make sure that everything's in order, and that's all the way from your house, and you make sure you plan better and everything else. And that's why I think you look at the cryptocurrency differently than other people have. So do you want to talk about why cryptocurrency keeps you up at night?
Why it keeps me awake? Because there's no regulation, no control. It's a black market trading place, and it allows a lot of criminal activity, because criminals can wash their money in crypto. They can just buy cryptocurrency, and it gives them the ability to enter that market and have a legitimate currency, quote unquote. If the cryptocurrency became the international trade norm, right now the US dollar is the international trading currency. If the cryptocurrency became an international trading currency, it could wreak havoc on our dollar, push the value of our dollar down. Cryptocurrency, if that were the case, also federal governments or any government would lose the ability to exercise monetary policy to either prop up or reduce the value of their currency. And so it just creates all sorts of problems for all sorts of governments. And I'm fearful of it. I refer to it as poison squared. And it just creates a problem, and an avenue for people to avoid all sorts of government policies
And taxes.
and taxes.
Right. And I think that's why it went up so much once they, and I'm not knocking political Biden or whatever, excuse me, about how they, all of a sudden the taxes are going to go up, right? They're going to change this. And all of a sudden that thing went through the roof, right? Because people are, but I think what got me was what you stated about that. Can you explain how people do oil?
So if you want to buy oil right now in the world market, with a few exceptions, you have to buy dollars, because dollars are the currency that most producing countries that produce oil do business in. So if you want to go to Saudi Arabia and buy crude oil from them, first you have to buy dollars, and then you buy the crude oil with the dollars. And so dollars have become, the US dollar has become the international currency. And obviously there are some countries that don't like that. Namely China and Russia. They don't want to have to buy dollars because it's an insult to them and to their currency. So they're trying to change that rule. In fact, with Iran, who have been selling oil, they were blockaded, basically blackballed by the U.S. government and other European countries, and not trying to get their oil sold, trying to wreck their economies. They would sell to Russia and China because they don't feel the need to follow international rules, and so they would trade in their currency. And Iran was obviously not buying dollars, so that goes on. But for the major production of the world, people still want dollars because the dollar is the safest currency, because it's protected by the full faith and credit of the taxpayers and the U.S. government. So that's why the dollar is still the international trade for now. But if cryptocurrency were adopted by all other countries and they all accepted it, that could go away.
And that could be bad for the dollar.
That would be bad for the dollar.
And then that would be bad if you try to buy things from other countries. Right.
It would certainly complicate foreign trade, but it's also complicated that I don't really have a real good handle on it. China has announced that they have established their own cryptocurrency, and if you want to do business with China, maybe you'll have to buy their currency. Who knows? So.
No, I'm just talking about like when you go to Mexico to exchange your money, right? You always use pesos, and it's been ridiculously, their number's been 22 to 1, whatever that 18 to 1 or whatever the number is now. If our dollar drops and they get stronger, then it's going to be more expensive for us to buy other people's products.
No, there's an argument for cryptocurrency. I don't have to exchange my money when I come through the airport. I can just go on my phone, and I got my cryptocurrency on my iPhone, and I can. Oh, somebody sent me a text, and I could have avoid that currency exchange, right?
Right. I mean, there's a football player who getting his, I think it was I forget where he's from. It just came on the news today that he's getting his full salary in cryptocurrency.
Cryptocurrency. I had a client in my office the other day, a recently retired lady, and fairly successful, good saver, and we were going over her finances, and she said, "Oh, by the way, I have $180,000 in cryptocurrency." I said, "You what?" She said, "Yeah, a friend of mine told me 2 years ago I better buy this," and she did. She had no clue what she was buying, and God bless her, good for her. She's now got $180,000 from a $10,000 investment in cryptocurrency. Well, that can't continue to hold. It's kind of like lumber prices. It's got to go back down.
So she bought four.
I have $10,000 worth.
Yeah. Back then, I think it was and that's not much. I mean, $10,000 worth. Because I mean,
she had no clue what she was doing. Not a clue.
Well, it's like my son. He bought, through Robinhood or whatever. He paid $100 and he's up, $1,500. He's so happy, right? But when you're in the Army as an airborne, that's a lot of money, right? He's jumping out on planes a month for extra $250 a month. So it's all relative.
Oh, God bless him. I hope he keeps. Yeah, they make more, but still, the cryptocurrency thing, it baffles me and it scares me because it makes the future look unpredictable.
Right. And that's kind of what I wanted to go over today. Some of the stuff we talked about on the radio, that we went over, and plus a little bit more on the lumber stuff, because people want to know how come the prices are so high. Because I didn't know. I mean, I had no idea, and I had no idea that the big companies were still making, it's making so much money. And you would think, I understand capitalism, but sometimes that's like crookery. It's how you want to look at it, right? We're going to keep or collusion or something like that when they used to keep the prices.
That's when they all talk. They're not allowed to talk about their prices, but they wink and nod.
They can post it and then they can match it, right? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Someone was telling me that they went in for a 2x4 a long time ago. It was like $1.99 there at $12. Or someone was saying, we watch the paper now. So when 2x4s drop $2, we go in and buy a whole bunch of them for ourselves.
I bought T111 wood siding for my cabin in May, and I paid $30 a sheet, 9 by 4 sheets, 9 foot by 4 foot sheets. They're $110 a sheet now.
Wow, that's.
I'm not going to do that rest of that project for a while.
At least for a year. That's why we're thinking that building our home, we're going to wait. We're splitting the property, we're doing stuff. Next year we'll start some of it. But you don't know.
That's a tough call because interest rates might be higher too, right?
Yeah, I'm not worried about that.
Yeah,
I mean, I got in the business taking people from 13 to 9. They love me. If I give somebody a 3% now, they think I'm taking advantage of them. So, I still think even if rates go up next year, we're talking. I mean, they're not going to go that high unless we have some major inflation issues that are coming that we don't see. And if that
higher oil prices are up 30%, so that's pretty inflationary.
Yeah, but that's up that because we cut a pipeline.
That's part of it.
What's the other part?
What's the other part? Yeah, the pipeline. OPEC slowed down production. We can't do any more fracking on government-owned properties, which the federal government owns most of the property that we want to drill for oil for. So there's no more contracts to exploration or drilling on federally owned property for now. So that has slowed down. That has raised prices on anticipation of less product available. So that's raised prices. So some of the government policies are definitely going to cause some inflation. So, but I just don't know how badly it's going to affect us or to what degree. So
right.
I'll have to wait and see.
And that's, I also was, one last thing, I was looking at some stuff and they're talking about house prices, right? Housing prices. And they're like, we're so crazy right now because of what has happened with the pent up demand and pandemic and everything. And people are still buying houses to get out of certain areas and moving certain places. But, in 6 months, are we still going to see those same amount of moves? Are we still going to see that? Or is it going to settle down a little bit more to where it's, I don't want to say norm, but more of a, I'm not writing $75,000 over asking to get your house. My neighbor bought the cabin next door to me, or I should say the neighbor that had next door sold the cabin next door to me. And he priced it $100,000 over what a couple agents told me they thought it was worth. He got it. Yeah.
So the agents are baffled too.
Well, the problem is it's that whole supply and demand, and certain properties are going to be like, this cabin was only 17 years old in a community where, 80% of the cabins are 1960 to 1980s, right? And not remodeled,
Mhm.
right? So this was beautiful and it was ready to go. So was it worth the 75,000? Probably additional over the appraised value. So the question really, it still is property. There's only so much land, there's only so many houses. Certain properties are going to get more money than other properties. In the Bay Area, there was a property went $1 million over asking because of the backyard. So it's just that whole, demand for it. Yeah. I
Must
didn't
be a
tell you
nice
that.
backyard.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it was a landscaper. I guess I heard the story from somebody else that they redid the backyard. Now that company's thinking about doing another one. Well, yeah, I would too. But the
Yeah.
question is, will you get the same amount? And that's what we don't know going forward. Because a lot of people want to get into homes, and when you have so many people wanting homes, and and then they can't get in, they get just they get not upset, but they get jaded to where, do I really want to keep writing offers? So I don't know. It's an unusual world we're in right now.
Yep. Well, the only constant is change, and so this too will change at some point, and we'll be complaining about something else or worried about something else. So the answer, of course, is be careful, spread around, don't overextend yourself, take advantage of these low rates in any way you can.
All right, and we should stop right there. That was amazing.
Wrap it up.
Hey, Tom, I want to appreciate you being on here today, and thank you again for doing the radio like you do every time we call you. We appreciate it.
Well, I love Marlene and I respect you.
Oh, well, you don't love me too? That hurt. All right, stay right there. All right, you guys, everybody, thank you for watching us today. And if you're watching this on YouTube later, please subscribe, like, and share. And we will be back on Thursday at 11 a.m. Thank you again. Thanks, Tom.
You're welcome. Thank you.